In terms of mission, when the front line are all unified, that is a very, very good thing.
Well, not just unified, but what I just heard you say was holding each other accountable.
It's one thing to say, I'm unified. What does that look like? Hey, good day and welcome to the Consultant and the Coach podcast. I'm here with my good buddy Josh. As always, how are you, man?
Doing great. Another day.
Another day. All the War They Want business application. We did the book review last week.
That's right.
Which was just a very quick overview of the book by Jeff Engle, who's from Conquest Cyber, and the book is about how do you defend against cyber risk, but also how does that apply even to other businesses? I'm sure he would not say this book just applies to companies that want to defend against cyber. But we're going to get into business applications of his book. What scripture did he came up with? Business application of what Mr. Engle is.
Right. One of the things that he talks a lot about in the book that we didn't get into much last week, but we will get into a little more today around the importance of choosing your team, what he calls the plank holders. And I think we're going to talk more about the mission as a concept, chapter 7. But plank holders is definitely important. And there was a certain person who we like to talk about a lot in our lives. His name is Jesus. And Jesus has a thing or two to teach us about team selection I thought might be useful from Matthew chapter 4.
Yeah.
Where he says, as he was walking along the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the sea, since they were fishermen. Follow me, he told them, and I will make you fish for people. Immediately they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They went in a boat, and Zebedee, their father, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left the boat, their father, and followed him. And what I thought was interesting about that was, you think about the disciples that Jesus had, and they seemingly weren't very impressive.
No,
right?
I wouldn't have picked
normal
them first go around,
right? But the importance about, as we talk in his book about mission as concept, the importance really bigger than obviously any business mission was the mission that Jesus was about really life change for people through him, right? And something he must have known about the selection of those people, because he didn't just pick anybody, because the results were the fact that he picked people who, by the end, they so understood and believed in his mission, they all died for it.
They truly did.
Which is what you want, right? We talk about mission as a concept, and I don't want to over-index the value of that, but as we apply it, it's about, finding people who are so in tune and understanding what it is you want to achieve and so willing to go all the way with you, the leader, that they are driving that. And the result was, explosive growth of the church, right? That could never have happened. I mean, Jesus himself really didn't see that growth at all in terms of his, time on earth. And, obviously it was well after the Holy Spirit had come, and there's all the things that happened at Pentecost and all of that. So I don't want to, it's not completely one for one, but I thought it was a very helpful sort of construct to remember that, while picking your team is important, if you're looking for the ultimate example, Jesus was quite good at choosing a team.
And very intentional. So yes, it's not just a concept. And, it was, so a little context of this, I'm chatting with Josh. We both read the book, and he was so fired up over this chapter alone in an amazing way. So what Mr. Engles writes in terms of mission as a concept, how does that apply to business? As you're working in consulting, why is that so vitally important that we understand?
Yeah, and I would say that, so I would think there's lots of things here that I would apply to certain contexts, right? He talked a lot about cyber industry, right? And there's a lot of things that kind of apply to that, or military. There were things that he talked about, this plank holders and team selection, but I've worked with a lot of startups, and that's kind of something you really focus on either in a startup or maybe if you're a new senior executive, right? And you're building a team. But this chapter 7 to me was the nugget, because this is the most applicable, the most helpful, the most clearly summarized view of a key business concept that you could take to any company and do something significant with it, right? This idea, the way he framed the mission as a concept idea. I mean, it certainly is a space we're going to get into talking to Jeff about when he's able to join, because I've got a lot of questions about in terms of where he came up with it, but it's really fascinating. So we'll talk about it and talk about how to apply it to different businesses. But.
So one of the things that sticks to me about, mission as a concept is you will know when the mission is clear and not just as a concept. It's very, very clear. And I had a really cool, unfortunate thing happen at my work today, and I didn't see it happen, but it came through the channels all the way up to me, where someone said, "Did you hear that this team member confronted this team member because they were not fully on mission?" And I was like, "Really? That's amazing." And so what we had going on at our company was someone wasn't fulfilling their side of the bargain. And we're not even talking a senior team leader or a team lead or executive. We're talking two people.
Two frontline people.
And one saw that this person was not fulfilling their end of the bargain. They went and said, "Hey, no, you need to bring it."
Yep.
And so in terms of mission, when the front line are all unified,
right,
that is a very, very good thing.
Well, not just unified, but what I just heard you say was holding each other accountable.
And it's one thing to say I'm unified, but what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, I mean, not to go off too much of a tangent, kind of get ahead of ourselves for life application. It sounds a lot like, how we feel as parents when someone else catches our kids doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
Right? When someone comes to you and says, "Oh, I saw your son or daughter doing da-da-da-da-da," right? And it's a good thing. Usually I hear about the not good things. But the good things are big compliments, right? You're like, "Oh, okay, they've been listening for all these years about da-da-da-da-da value we've been trying to teach," right? Whatever that is. So, yeah.
One of the things he says in the book is, in terms of his style, he says what I wrote is his style is what he is doing is not typically what he is doing. He likes to develop kind of with a special ops mindset. And so it's really kind of cool because when he's going into cybersecurity, which I don't know much of, so I would say that's a little bit like me talking about the military. I've heard a lot. I've watched movies. I am not a military person. I appreciate it. But he goes into it with a special ops mindset. How can we look at business the same way?
Yeah, no, and I think that he has several, talking about framing and symbolism, he has several helpful frames, including this, mission as a concept that you could take and apply, I think, to a business around how do you simplify, how do you focus on the most important things. We heard that a lot, both in his book, we heard that a lot in Extreme Ownership, and how to basically set people up for success, right, as the leader. And that's your goal, is to really get people on board, get them all aligned around the right things, and set them loose, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's what this mission. I mean, do you want to walk through the mission as a concept?
Yeah, let's framework? Do it. Yeah, why don't you read that?
Well, he talks about, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. There's what he calls the pathway or the vehicle. We'll talk about these. The approach or the engine, the guiding principle, or what he calls the GPS, our destination, and then our fuel, right? And so I think so going through these. I think the pathway or the vehicle, I think that's basically their standard work, right? The engine, I think that's basically the kind of differentiation, I think is the way I interpreted that. I thought it was interesting that the guiding principle was one thing, presumably. I don't know what that is that he has in here, but I assume it's like the one thing.
So what's the mission that defines each individual business?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had a mission statement, which was different, I think. A guiding principle versus then, a destination, or maybe that's in a mission or objective. But then he also had the fuel, or I interpreted that as the culture. So he had very succinctly, and these are all only a few words each, right? So it's not like a paragraph in each one of these. There's 1, 2, 3 words, 4 words.
Well, what sticks out to me in terms of the fuel?
Yeah.
What is propelling this jet engine? Whether it's easy with a jet. Well, jet fuel is what propels it. But what propels each business, whether it be healthcare, whether it be lawn care, whether it be ministry, what is propelling? And we always need to remember what propels one's business.
Yeah, and he spends the last third of the book on that, right? And so he talks. So that's why I think this is such a helpful kind of. This chapter's right in the middle of the book, I think, intentionally. But the whole last third of the book or so is about what he calls the fuel, right? Which is doing cool stuff that makes an impact with people we like, right? So I think he has 3 different chapters, so fourth of the book. But this idea that, tying to your mission, you better doing something that's really meaningful, right? That's important, that people can believe in, because people want to go home feeling like the work they're doing matters, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They want to, be doing cool stuff to impact that problem, and then, doing it around and with friends and people that we actually enjoy, because, frankly, we spend more time with our workmates many times than we do with our families, and so you kind of want to like the people you work with. And I've been in a lot of situations where I don't, and it is miserable when you don't.
Oh, it is.
So I can see why that's so important. And then I think he's used that culture, that fuel, to drive continual growth on every one of these other areas of his business.
And you mentioned one of the things, you got to like the people you work with. Now, this doesn't mean you hang out with them 24/7, 365. But you need to at least like people that, you're going to the front line with.
Don't you have a best friend at work?
Well, yeah, I do work with my wife, and it's awesome.
I'm making fun of the research that says you have to have a BFF at work. That makes things better.
If you do, it's awesome. It really is.
I'm not sure
it's
required, but it's okay.
But it's good.
But you should like each other, for sure.
And there's been a lot of times where we have interviewed a number of people for our work, or I've talked to other companies. Hey, and it comes down to 2 or 3 options. And I'll usually end up with, which one do you like the most? It's like, we're not allowed to do that. Of course you can do that. When we were picking our spouse, it wasn't like, did you like him? Well, I didn't like him, but she brings these 3 things to the table. Of course we loved our spouse. Of course we liked hanging out with them. That's awesome.
Right. Yeah, no, it should definitely be. It's not a reason to pick somebody only, but it's definitely something that you want to consider in the process. Right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
and
we
he
talked
says
about
that. You've got to be, it's not only okay, it's encouraged to like the people that you work with.
Yeah. You know who I'd like to get together?
Who?
Is Jeff Engle with Dave Ramsey. And I'd love to do a book conversation between the two of them, because there's a lot of crossover here, right? There's a lot of interesting concepts that aren't directly quoted. Like I'm not sure, I can't tell here if Jeff Engle knows of or has ever even read Dave Ramsey. I'd have to even double check all the quotations in the back, but nothing I saw direct. But a lot of concepts were similar. This idea of doing it with people you like, right? And Dave talks a lot about that.
And I think a lot of it too is, Jeff, we don't know his background, but he does come out of the military. In the military, the U.S. military does what works. If it didn't work, they would not teach the entire military. Whereas Ramsey is very biblically framed, and Scripture has stood the test of time. So, I mean, there's obviously crossover on what works in life. I would assume possibly that's very, very similar.
It just struck me. What do you think about this idea of, he talks about his pathway or his vehicle in the approach of how easy is that for you to articulate for your company?
I'm getting better at it.
Yeah.
I used to not be very good at all at articulating the path. So I think for our business, number one is mission. You have to, and this is why I loved how you led with mission. You've got to know the mission. But then there's the stories about the mission. What are we trying to do? So, for example, our mission in healthcare is to take care of other people in need and to love them. But I got a text message yesterday from a friend of a friend, and she just said, "Hey, Erik, thank you so much for delivering this lift chair to our house, and it has allowed me to do this, to stay active, and to do several things." So that was a story I'm able to tell that story to my team to further encourage them. And it's just like what you see Jesus doing, where you have, hey, there are definitely, you have the 10 Commandments, but it's not, Jesus didn't just say, hey, here are the 10 Commandments. They show up all throughout the Sermon on the Mount. There's the story that corresponds with that. And I think that's kind of what you see.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I guess one of the things I was thinking about with that one, I think is similar, but where story to me potentially falls short. And I hear this a lot with clients. I've done a lot of work on transformation efforts, so figuring out how to, especially in healthcare, digital transformation, but even outside healthcare, there's always this recognition that a mission is great. I think to some degree story is great because it sort of gives you a view of the 10,000 miles from here, where we want to be, right? And it's somewhat easy when we know, okay, I want to get to that mountain over there, and I can see the path in front of me for the first mile. But nobody really knows what's going to come between miles 2 and 10,000, right? Or whatever it is. And I think the thing that I appreciate about what he offers here is if you can spend the time, and it's not quick, if you're willing to spend the time and the effort to try to understand your business and articulate things like the path and the approach and your guiding principle or principles in a fairly succinct way, you're actually going to give your people enough resources to then understand not what to do at every mile between mile 2 and 10,000, but enough to understand that they can navigate those miles well when they get there. And I think that's what.
And I would also add along the way, because you don't want all your employees to be robots. You want them ebbing and flowing. You understand the mission. How do you handle how this is a little bit different, how this is a little bit different? You want them to be creative, but not deviate from the mission.
Well, and not deviate from the mission. Also, not. I think what he's saying, don't deviate from, the approach we've agreed upon, the pathway that we've given you, right? Don't run off into the woods, right? Stay on the path and navigate around the rock, the log, the animal, right? The wild animal,
and understanding what that is. So I had our company offsite yesterday, and someone was making a suggestion. We're in Washington State, and it's like, we need to open a location in Oregon. And I was like, immediately one of my leaders said, we can't do that because we are a Central Washington company. Oregon is not part of Central Washington for our mission statement. But props to them, because they immediately understood this is our mission. And a lot of times things are good, but if it's not part of a business's mission, one thing, either A, don't do it, or B, you need to change the mission statement.
I was going to say, you need to change the mission statement.
We could say we are a Northwest company, but we could not say, hey, we strive as a Central Washington company. And a lot of this is understanding the mission. And when people understand the mission, they're way more focused, no matter what the purpose of each individual business is.
So here's the question. If you know what your mission statement is, but someone has an idea like that that's outside the mission, how do you evaluate? Do you throw out the idea, or do you change the mission? How do you evaluate that?
Well, you have to do either or, because if we were to be moving to Oregon, we have to change our mission statement.
How do you evaluate that?
That's a really, really good question.
Because I would wonder, looking at, maybe this is a question for Jeff, if you have your 4 or 5, categories here. If someone were to propose an idea that met your path, was part of your approach, fit within your guiding principle, still leveraged your fuel or your culture, but the only thing that was off was your mission statement.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Should you consider altering your mission statement?
I would say if it's a really, really great idea and you're bought into changing your mission.
Right.
But I would also go so far as to say if it's contrary to the mission and you're still committed to the mission, I would say no, you don't do it. The mission of a company is its guiding principles. What are you created to do?
Yeah, I guess it's just a question of are there aspects? Because to your point, like it's not probably, what's the full mission statement you have as a company? Like Central Washington.
Providing high quality home medical equipment to the community of Central Washington.
Yeah, so I mean, like you're not altering the core of that mission statement by changing the geography.
No, right. But so I'm saying is, we're splitting hairs, but what I'm saying is it would have to change to the Northwest.
Yeah.
Or Eastern Washington.
Of course.
Or what I could call it the Inland Empire.
Eastern Cascades.
But you just need to make sure the mission statement's there to guide.
Yes.
And this is why, let's say in ice hockey, why is an ice rink better than playing hockey on an open lake? Well, you need to kind of keep the puck in there. If not, you're going to be chasing the puck all day long. We need guiding principle, the mission that we're focusing on. I'm sure it's fun to ice skate, but you're going to spend all time. You need to have boundaries in a business.
Right. Nope, that makes sense. I agree. What else? What do we have here from this this statement or this chapter? Excuse me. What else did you like here from mission as this concept?
I want to go back to the symbolism. I brought it up a little bit the first time, but even within business, symbolism is so vitally important. And it really, so what I would say for those leading businesses, every business is different, but be very aware of the symbolism within the business. What are you using to symbolize what your company does? Because people are drawn towards it. It's got to be great. And so this is why you see people join the military. It's not because I'm going to join the military because there's a great benefits package. No, they join the military because they want to protect the freedom that our country stands for. They join the military as a sense of identity, and
they want to do cool stuff that makes an impact.
Absolutely.
And they're assuming they're going to be people they like.
So this is where understand the symbolism and framing that each individual company does. I mean, look at any great. Is Apple better than a PC? I don't know, but I can definitely tell you that their marketing is better.
Right. Their ability to do symbolism is way better.
And where I just use that great symbolism. Now, you should have both an amazing product and great stories and symbolism.
Right.
But it's a both and.
Well, it's also, I've worked with a couple of great designers who understand it's not just about producing the designs, but it's about leveraging art and pictures to communicate symbols, right? Symbolism and story through different communication besides just the written word, right? And the ability to, as one jokes with me, a picture's worth 1,000 words. It could take me a long time to write 1,000 words, but he's able to come up with a picture really fast and still beat me to it, which he does frequently.
So I have a little exercise for anyone listening. And exercise is, think of a time where a great meeting or a great concept inspired you. Figure what was it that inspired you? Was it the facts? Almost always it was the symbolism and framing around it.
Sure.
So think what inspired you. Ask other people, what inspires you about that? It'll point us in the right direction.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, hey, thanks to Jeff Engle, who sent us an early copy of this book. Hey, if you please go out and get it. The link to the book is in our show notes. And I'm not sure if it's next week or the week after that. We have a one-on-one, or I guess it would be a two-on-one interview with Mr. Engle to hear his perspective of what led him to write the book. And we have some clarifying questions. We're a little confused on some areas.
Sure.
Hopefully he will enlighten us
I'm sure he
on
will.
that.
Yeah.
It'll be awesome. But in the meantime, please go to theconsultantandthecoach.com and reach out to us if you have any questions. We'd absolutely love to hear from you.
Sounds good. Take care.